My wife gave me divorce papers while I was infiltrating a criminal organization. She cheated with a doctor and admitted, what happened with my husband was a mistake. I don't want to be with him anymore. I want to be with you. I woke up to an annoying beeping, beeping, beeping. I could not see a thing, and when I tried to rub my eyes, I realized that my arms were held down with some kind of restraints. A tube was stuck down my throat, making it impossible to speak. I could not see, I could not move, and I could not speak. What the hell was happening? The last thing I remembered was a blinding flash and a deafening explosion. As I began to remember the events that led to that night, someone entered the room and spoke to me. Good morning, Detective Stevens. I am Dr. Leonard Simons. Now that you are awake, I am going to remove these restraints and take the ventilator out of your throat so you can speak. After I finish, there is a Detective Collins in the hallway waiting for you. After he removed the ventilator, I was able to speak in a hoarse whisper in my eyes. I asked, am I blind? Well, I do not think so, but we should know more after a couple of weeks. Your retinas were severely burned by the flashbang grenade thrown into the room where you were. There is a good chance they will heal and your sight will be restored, he replied. Also, the concussion from the explosion destroyed both of your eardrums. However, we were able to restore your hearing with implants. So your hearing ability is now 50% better than before. What else is wrong with me? Was my next question. The gunshot to your lower left leg broke both the fibula and the tibia, which required surgery to screw the bones back together. Your left shoulder was also injured by 2 gunshots. That was also surgically repaired. Other than that, and your eyes, you have no other major injuries. Shortly after explaining what I could expect in the coming months, the doctor left and my partner, Detective Gary Collins, entered my room. Damn, Rick, you look like hell, he joked. Let me bring you up to date on what you have missed for the last week. You have not told me about Mendoza. Did we catch the bastard? I asked. There was a long silence. Tell me, Gary, did we catch Mendoza? He finally answered in a low voice, no. The bastard and his sister slipped away from us, but you put 5 of his thugs in their graves. And if that stupid DEA rookie had not fired that flashbang grenade, your eyes would be fine. You paid a high price for this operation. You have no idea, my friend, I said. Emily served me with divorce papers the day before all this happened. What? He exclaimed. Yes, divorce and a temporary restraining order. I cannot get within 150 meters of her or the house. Wow, man. I am sorry. Why does she need an order of protection? What are you going to do about it? I do not know. I cannot see, I cannot walk, and I can barely speak, I replied. Gary, what the hell can I do? Just then, Gary's cell phone rang. After answering it, he told me, look, man, I have to go now. I will be back tomorrow. Lying in my bed, I sighed to myself. What the hell was I going to do with all this mess? In my mind, I went back about 6 years. I was 18 years old and had just graduated from high school. Just 3 months after September 11th, I enlisted in the Marine Corps, hoping to do my part in a war against those who had committed that act of atrocity. I was discharged from the Marines after 4 years of service and went back to school. While in the service, I had taken many college courses and managed to get an associate's degree in science and criminal justice. When I returned home, I applied and was accepted into the police academy. So here I was, 2 years later, sitting in a crowded student lounge, studying for an exam while I ate lunch, when someone asked if I minded if they sat in the only available seat at the table. Without looking up, I nodded my head and gestured for them to sit down. After a few moments, I looked up and met the bluest eyes I had ever seen and immediately developed a case of terminal stuttering. Please, forgive my rude behavior, I managed to say. My name is Rick. Actually, it is Frederick Stevens, but everyone calls me Rick. Hello, Rick. My name is Emily Patterson, and an apology is not necessary. I realize I interrupted your studying, so I should be the one to apologize. From that moment, I knew this was the girl I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. By the time we finished lunch, I managed to get a date with her for Friday night. She was enrolled in nursing school and was getting a bachelor's degree in physical therapy and rehabilitation. She had 3 semesters left to finish. As for me, I was finishing my last semester of school and would graduate with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice to become a police officer, just like my great-grandfather, grandfather, and father. I would be the 4th generation to work for the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. That one date led to 100 other dates, and I fell more deeply in love with her. Shortly after Emily graduated, we got married. She got a job at one of the many local rehabilitation centers, and my career at the department went from patrol to the detective bureau. The next 3 years were wonderful, and then I fell into the Mendoza case. Juan Carlos Mendoza was the leader of the main drug cartel in South Florida. He had recently expanded his operations to include prostitution, gambling, loan sharking, as well as other organized crime activities. The homicide rate had risen sharply in the city since he expanded his operation. The task force I was assigned to was tasked with putting an end to his cartel. It was decided that we needed to infiltrate someone into his inner circle to gather intelligence. The problem was that it was a very tight-knit organization, and we had very few options to get someone inside. I was chosen to infiltrate his inner circle. We decided that the best way to do this was to get close to his sister, who was his closest confidant, Angelique Mendoza. She had it all. She was beautiful, with blonde hair and just a few freckles on her nose. She had a large bust and a butt that simply could not be ignored. Yes, she had it all. Everything, except morals. She was up for anyone, young or old, black or white, man or woman. She did not care as long as she enjoyed it. Now, how was I going to get her to accept me without becoming another notch on her seduction belt? There was no way I was going to be intimate with her, so I decided to play with her mind. I started showing up at the clubs and bars she frequented. Finally, one night, she saw me and placed her beautiful butt on the stool next to me at the bar of the elbow room. We struck up a conversation, and she must have liked what she saw and heard, because the next thing I knew, she made a big advance. I rejected her advances, and that must have angered her. She had never been rejected. I left her sitting there and left. The next night, I went back, and the evening was practically the same. I left her sitting alone when I left abruptly. This continued for several days, and I finally sensed that I had become something she needed to protect her reputation. We started dating, but nothing happened beyond holding hands. I let her get my cover story out over the next few weeks. I was in a business that required me to travel extensively through South America, Asia, and Europe. I once took a trip to Hong Kong, or so I told her. In reality, I just disappeared for 10 days. When I returned, she bombarded me with questions. Where did I go? Where did I stay? What business did I do? I gave her enough answers to whet her curiosity. Then, one day, she said she had someone she wanted me to meet. We drove to a large house surrounded by a concrete block wall in Harbor Beach. He was inside. It was Mendoza's house and headquarters. The conversation with Mendoza started pleasantly, but soon moved on to more direct questions. I gave him my rehearsed cover story, and he seemed to believe it. Meanwhile, my relationship with Angelique remained the same, no sex. I was driving her crazy. As she became more and more frustrated, she began to let her guard down, and I was able to learn a lot about her brother's operation. Then, one night, everything went to hell. The plan was to arrest Mendoza, Angelique, and their trusted lieutenants on charges of drug trafficking, racketeering, and other serious crimes. I was wearing a wire, as always, and when everyone arrived, I would give the signal to move in. As luck would have it, one of his lieutenants brought an associate with him, whom I had arrested a couple of years ago. He recognized me, shouted a warning, and everyone drew their weapons and started shooting. Mendoza and Angelique managed to escape in the confusion. And that is how I ended up in the hospital, with an operated leg, an injured shoulder, and blind. During the 2 months of the undercover operation, I was not able to see or contact Emily in any way. One of the task force members told her I was on a secret mission. It was hard for me not to be with the love of my life, and I thought it was for her too. Then, the day before the night of the shootout, I was served with divorce papers and a temporary restraining order. How the hell the process server had found me, I do not know, but he did. The next day, Gary returned. I had just finished lunch, if you could call the food they served at the hospital food, and I had set aside half of the unfinished meal. Hey buddy, are you feeling better today? Not really, I replied. What is new? Well, the word on the street is that Mendoza is furious with you and has sworn to kill you, he answered. The hospital has placed its security staff at all entrances and hallways on this floor. I called him closer and whispered a request to him. He put his right foot on the chair next to my bed and, rolling up his pants, he pulled out a .32 automatic from a case attached to his calf, putting it in my hand. What the hell are you going to do with this? You cannot even see. I know, I replied, sliding it under my blanket. I just feel safer having it with me. Okay, but there is no way he can get to you here, Rick. Sure, just like he was not going to be able to slip past all those guys outside his house the other night, I snorted. We changed the conversation to some details about the case and spent the next 30 or 40 minutes talking about work. Before he left, he told me that his wife, Susan, was going to meet with Emily in a couple of days and try to find out why I had been served with divorce papers. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. Say hi to Susan for me. I will, buddy, he said, patting my good leg as he left. The only way I had any idea of the time was by listening to the television, not that I could see it. When the 11 o'clock news ended, I turned it off and tried to sleep. I must have fallen asleep just as the fire alarms went off. I heard a lot of commotion in the hallway, and then everything went quiet. I realized someone was entering my room and approaching the bed. You son of a bitch, you ruined my business and almost killed me. Too bad you failed. Now I am going to kill you. It was Mendoza. He yanked the pillow from under my head. I felt a gun in his hand as he leaned over and placed it against my head. He never got a chance to pull the trigger. Pushing my gun up into his chest, I fired 2 quick shots. As he fell, he managed to fire once, hitting hell knows what. Well, you have not lost any of your charm, said a voice I recognized as Gary's. Thank God you had my gun, or we would not be having this conversation. You got him, Rick, you got him. 2 in the chest, both in the heart. One of our uniformed officers caught Angelique as she was waiting in the parking lot in her car. How long have I been out? I asked. About 12 hours, he replied. You are quite a hero. It is all over the TV news. The Sun-Sentinel newspaper has a prominent headline. Blind cop kills crime boss. Great, just what I need, publicity. I just want to get out of here, Gary. It is not safe, I joked. Soon, buddy, soon. The doctors say maybe the day after tomorrow, when they move you back to a regular room. The rest of the guys and the chief want to see you. 2 days later, I was discharged and Gary and his wife took me to a safe apartment on the beach in Pompano to recover. The department was paying all the bills and arrangements were being made with an agency to provide me with 24-hour care until I regained my sight and could take care of myself. They told me the apartment was the penthouse on the 25th floor with a great view of the Atlantic, not that I cared without being able to see. This time, armed Fort Lauderdale police officers were stationed near the elevators and stairs. I could only hope they would do a better job than the guys from the hospital security. Gary and Susan wheeled me to the elevator and accompanied me up the 25 floors to the penthouse. Once inside, they described the layout of the place to me. We sat and talked, avoiding the elephant in the room. Finally, Susan said, I saw Emily yesterday. Yes, I went to see Emily yesterday afternoon, when I knew she would be home from work. As I was walking up the sidewalk, the front door opened, and a man came out carrying a small travel bag. He walked past me without a word. Emily greeted me at the open door, saying, Susan, what brings you here? Come in and make yourself comfortable. Would you like something to drink? Emily and I have known each other since 2nd grade. We have been best friends ever since. She and Rick introduced me to Gary a few years ago, and she was the maid of honor at my wedding. Enough. Emily, you know why I am here. What is going on between you and Rick? And who the hell was that leaving with a travel bag? Are you sleeping with him? Is he the reason you are divorcing Rick? No, it is not what it looks like, Susan. That was Richard Scott. He is a doctor at the rehabilitation center where I work. At that moment, she looked down and did not meet my eyes. He got here about half an hour ago. I did not invite him. He wanted to spend the night with me, and I was about to say yes when I saw my wedding photo on the bookshelf. I realized I could not cheat on Rick, even if I wanted to. Did Rick send you here? I have not seen or heard from him in over 2 months. I am divorcing Rick because he was cheating on me, she continued. Who told you that? It is not true, and you know it. Oh, yes. Then why has he been seeing a blonde for the past few months? It was Richard who told me. He saw them together at a couple of clubs around town. I refused to believe him, and then one night he took me to the Kit Kat Club, and I saw what was happening with my own eyes. I filed for divorce the next morning. I know he was served, but did he even try to contact me? How could he? You also got a protection order against him. The restraining order prevents him from coming within 150 meters of you or contacting you in any way, I reminded her. Looking at my watch, I asked her, Emily, have you been watching the news or reading the newspapers in the last few days? If not, there is something you need to see. I I went to the television and tuned it to the local news on the Fox affiliate station. I sat down again and took a copy of that morning's Sun-Sentinel front page out of my large purse. The main story on the television news was the dismantling of the Mendoza cartel. When they got to the part detailing Rick's role in the case and his subsequent injuries, Emily became hysterical. After calming her down, I handed her the newspaper with the prominent headline at the top of the page. "Read this later, when you have calmed down a bit." I know what I did to her sounds cruel, but she had to feel some of the pain Rick was suffering. But, she stammered, was he sleeping with that blonde just so he could make a case against her brother? "Do not go down that road with that," I replied. "He was wearing a wire when he was with her, and everything was recorded. He was also under video surveillance the whole time." Gary told me that many of the guys laughed at him and could not believe how he could resist that vixen, but he did. Do you know what his nickname is? It is Boy Scout, because he honored the vows he made to the letter when they were married. "Are his injuries as bad as the news makes them seem?" she asked me. "Worse," I answered. "Initially, he had a broken left leg and a damaged left shoulder, in addition to the blindness. When he was attacked in the hospital, he received another gunshot wound to his right shoulder. He is totally incapacitated." "Oh my God, where is he? I have to see him," she said, starting to cry again. "No," I exclaimed. "You need to do a few things first. Remember, you have a protection order against him. That needs to be lifted before you can see him. I need to see him, to have him forgive me for being so stupid." "Okay," I replied. "He is being discharged from the hospital tomorrow, and this is what we are going to do." After Gary pushed Rick's wheelchair into the living room, we just sat and talked. I did not tell Rick or my husband everything that happened the night before. There was no point in going into detail, as that would only depress Rick even more. "Susan, how is she?" "She is fine. I just want her to be happy," said Rick. Just then, Gary's cell phone rang. Answering it, at the door, and Gary went to open it, with one hand on his service pistol until he was sure who it was. Just as he opened the door to let the two representatives in, his cell phone rang once more. "You can go ahead," was all I heard. The two men began to explain to me what their agency could do for me, when there was another knock on the door. As before, Gary checked who it was before opening the door. Before the representatives could resume their explanations, Emily entered and interrupted them. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming, but I do not think my husband will need your services after all. I am more than capable of taking care of him 24 hours a day now, for the next 50 years, if he will have me back." The next thing I knew, she was kneeling in front of my wheelchair, sobbing. "Please, please, let me come back and take care of you. Please, Rick, please." Finally, I managed to find my voice and said, "Thank you for coming, gentlemen, but I think I have found the person I want to stay with." Gary showed the two men to the door and thanked them again for coming. Then he came back with Susan and me, gave us a hug, and announced that they were leaving too. Emily got up and hugged Gary. Thank you, Gary, for being such a good friend to Rick." Then she hugged Susan and, through tears, managed to say something I could not quite hear. However, I heard Susan's response. "Just remember how much you love each other, and everything will be fine." "Well, if I am going to stay here with you, I need to get some things out of my car. Can you help me, Gary, before you go?" Hugging and kissing me, she whispered in my ear, "After I have moved my things, we will see about giving you a sponge bath, among other things." 7 months later, I was back at work, although with restrictions. We had left the apartment after 2 months and moved back to our house in Coral Springs. My sight had returned, and the healing of both shoulders and leg was practically complete. It would be a couple more weeks before I was cleared to return to full-time duty. I was sitting at my desk in the detective unit office, reviewing the Mendoza file once more. "You know, Gary, there is something here I cannot quite understand. I mean, Mendoza was cunning, but he was still just a thug. I do not think he was smart enough to put this whole complex organization together by himself. Do you have a copy of that tape from that night, when it all happened? I want to listen to it again," I asked him. "Yes, it is around here somewhere," he replied, rummaging through the evidence box, handing me the tape. I put it in the player and put on the headphones to listen to it once more. Just before I was discovered and the shooting started, I heard something. Rewinding the tape, I played it again. "Gary, listen to this," I said, handing him the headphones and playing that segment again. "Is that not Mendoza asking Angelique where RS is?" "Who is RS?" "I do not know, Rick." It must be something we missed when all the excitement started. That is not the only unknown, I commented. Gary, slide that second evidence box over here. It has some of the files we found in Mendoza's office, I said, rummaging through half a dozen file folders. I found what I was looking for, a memo to someone with the initials RS. It contained a list of dates and numbers. Several more documents with the initials DRRS were in the same folder. I wonder who this DRRS is, I pondered. Do you think there is a relationship with RS? We could not ask Angelique Mendoza about any of this. She was convicted in federal court for racketeering and drug trafficking. When she was sent to prison, she underwent a thorough physical examination. It was then that it was discovered she was HIV positive. When they gave her the news, the next day she fell into a severe depression. That night, she committed suicide in her cell. Well, until we tie up this loose end, I do not feel comfortable closing this case for now, I told Gary. On Friday afternoon, after spending the whole morning looking for more clues about who RS and DRS could be, I gave up and went home early. As I entered the kitchen from the garage, I could hear Emily on the phone in the living room. No, she exclaimed. I told you no this morning at work. It is never going to happen. I almost lost the man I love, and I am not going to risk my marriage for you. Leave me alone, she shouted, slamming the phone down hard. She saw me enter the room and sat down heavily on the sofa, with tears in her eyes. Did you hear? Was all she managed to say before bursting into tears completely. Maybe it would be better if you start from the beginning, honey, I said, sitting down next to her. To begin with, who were you talking to on the phone? It was Dr. Scott, from my work. He was the one who told me about you and that blonde. He tried to convince me you were cheating on me, and I started to believe him, she replied. Have I ever met him? Has he ever met me? I asked. He has seen a photograph of us. Maybe he has seen you once or twice when you picked me up from work. I do not remember, she replied. Then how did he know it was me with Angelique Mendoza? I do not know, Rick. RS just told me he saw you. Wait a minute. What did you just call him? RS. He prefers to be called RS instead of Richard. Everyone calls him RS at work, she replied. Something clicked in my mind, and I continued to gently question Emily. What does he do where you work? He is the administrative chief, and I think he might own part of the agency, she told me. Okay, honey, let us forget all this. What do you want to do over the weekend? I asked, but I did not forget. When I went to work on Monday morning, I told Gary what Emily had told me. I do not think that is enough to get a warrant against him, Gary told me. I knew he was right, but that would not stop me from investigating Richard Scott's life very closely. When I returned home that afternoon, Emily was waiting for me nervously. Hi, honey, what brings you home so early? Is everything okay? No, she replied. He started again this morning. I knew I could not keep working at the agency with him there. So I wrote a resignation letter and left it on his desk when he went out for lunch. I cleaned out my desk, and when I left to come home, I found this under my car's windshield wiper, she said, handing me an open envelope. We sat together outside, in the pool area, as I read the contents aloud. June 10th, 2013. To Emily Stevens, RN. From Richard Scott, MD, RS. Subject, resignation. Your resignation is not acceptable to me. You will remain in your current position for the foreseeable future. I expect you to be back at work on Monday morning. I know the only reason you are not with me now is because of an obstacle. A previous attempt has been made to remove this obstacle in your life, but I failed. I will now make sure the next attempt does not fail. Afterwards, you will realize how much you want to be with me. Oh, Rick, I am scared. What does he mean by an obstacle? I have not done anything to encourage him. You must believe me, she said, starting to cry and shaking her head violently from side to side. I know you have not. I know, I said, hugging her. I think he has become obsessed with you. Do not worry, I will take care of this. But I was worried. People in a mental state like his are dangerous, very dangerous. I knew I was the obstacle he was referring to. Taking my cell phone, I went out to the backyard and called Gary. Gary, come to my house right now and bring Susan with you, please. Also bring one of our tech guys. 45 minutes later, Gary, Susan, and Thomas Sullivan, our head of technology, arrived. Gesturing for them to remain silent, I took them through the house to the poolside patio. Tom, I need you to do a sweep of the house for hidden microphones. Check the phones too, handing him Emily's cell phone and this one too. Gary, read this, I said, handing him Scott's memo. Do you think we have enough for a search warrant now? Turning to Susan, I asked, Could you take Emily to her parents' house in Gainesville and stay with her for a few weeks, please? I would feel much better if she were out of town for a while. Half an hour later, Tom came out of the house, carrying his equipment, and announced that the house phones and the landline were clean, but Emily's phone had a hidden microphone and a GPS app installed. Her car also had a GPS installed. Okay, I said. This is what we are going to do. Emily, leave me your cell phone and take mine with you. I will get a new one later. Pack a bag big enough to last at least 3 weeks and go with Susan in Gary's car. Leave yours in the garage. After the girls left, Gary and I went in my car to the station. Tom followed us. When we arrived, I collected all our files on the Mendoza case, added Dr. Scott's memo, and we made a quick trip to the courthouse. We went to the state attorney's office and showed him what we had. He asked us to wait with him in the office while he read the entire file, and, after a few quick questions, he gave us the green light to go after Richard Scott. The following week turned out to be very fruitful. The first thing we did was review his finances. Until 7 months ago, $50,000 a week was being deposited into 10 separate accounts at different banks and credit unions that belonged to him. Each deposit was for less than the $10,000 that would trigger an IRS investigation. The money stopped coincidentally at the same time I killed Mendoza. In the last month, the money started flowing into these accounts again. We also discovered that Scott had volunteered at a sexually transmitted disease clinic for a short time a couple of years ago. When Gary consulted with the clinic about why he left the job, they had no answer. He simply stopped going to work. I had a suspicion that I shared with Gary, and we secured a warrant for the clinic's records of who he treated during the time he worked there. Surprise, surprise, one of the clients was Angelique Mendoza. He treated her for a minor infection. Another interesting fact was that Scott had also treated several clients of the clinic who were HIV positive. Then we checked the dates on which he began to receive the $50,000 deposits, and they coincided with the time he finished his treatment with Angelique. His connection to the Mendoza cartel was strengthening. It seems the good doctor has found another source of income, Gary told me. I think we should put him under 24/7 surveillance. I agreed, and we assigned a team to keep an eye on him. The good doctor paid off 5 days later. One of the guys from the surveillance team reported a meeting between Dr. Scott and a member of the Cortez criminal family the night before at a secluded club in Hollywood Beach. This information gave us another path to explore. I had not been home in the last 48 hours, and I told Gary I needed a change of clothes and a shower. When I got home, a little after 6, the first thing I did was check Emily's cell phone. I had turned it off and left it on the charger in the bedroom. There were several messages in her voicemail that I listened to. Most were from her friends, but 2 were from a blocked number. The first one I heard was from Monday after she and Susan left for Gainesville. It was from Dr. Scott, asking why she had not returned to work. He told her she could take another week off, but she better be back the following week. He did not sound very happy. The next one was left this morning. Now he was furious with her for not having returned to work. He told her he would be permanently taking care of the obstacle that was between them that very night. I tried to call Gary at the office, but he had left shortly after I did that afternoon. His cell phone went straight to voicemail, so I left him a message with the pertinent details. By then, it was already after 7 and it was starting to get dark. When the house phone rang, I answered, but I waited for someone to speak before I did. There was no one on the other side of the line, and, seconds later, the dial tone returned. Someone is checking if I am home, I thought. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was Gary. Rick, we have a problem. Scott gave our tail the slip over an hour ago. I got your message, and I am on my way to your house with backup. We will be there in less than 30 minutes. I turned off all the lights in the house except one in the hallway and one in the master bathroom. Turning on the shower, I let the water run and sat out of sight in a corner of the bedroom, loading a bullet into my Glock. I waited in the dark. Not even 10 minutes passed when I heard the sound of the sliding glass door from the patio into the kitchen being forced open. A man appeared in the doorway of my bedroom, silhouetted by the dim light from the hallway. He moved towards the bathroom door, holding a pistol in his left hand and a small travel bag in his right hand. I quietly left my seat and got behind him, placing my pistol to his right ear. I told him, "Do not even think about it. Move suddenly, and I will put a hole in your fucking head." I quickly disarmed him and, forcing his head against the wall, I handcuffed him. After turning on the bedroom lights, I whispered in his ear, "Now we wait for my partner and the rest of the team. Sit on the floor, with your legs stretched out in front of you. Where is Emily? Why is she not here? She invited me to come see her, he declared. Yeah, right. You came for a visit with a gun. Well, she is not here, I replied. Now shut up and sit down. When I opened his bag, I got the shock of my life. Inside was a collection of sadomasochistic and bondage paraphernalia. Then I understood. I was not the obstacle he wanted to eliminate. He was after Emily. He was using the GPS app on her phone to track her, and he thought she was at home alone. 5 minutes later, Gary and the rest of the team arrived, placing Scott under arrest. I read him his rights, and, shaking him to his feet, I said, "Get this trash out of my house." The next morning, Scott was taken from his cell for questioning. The state attorney, one of the assistant prosecutors, and I sat in the adjoining room, behind a one-way mirror. We could see and hear him, but he could not hear or see us. Scott was accompanied by his lawyer, who advised him not to say anything. He asked Gary, who would be doing the questioning, what he was going to be asked. Gary told him that, to begin with, he wanted to know what the relationship was between Scott and the Cortez organization. The lawyer whispered briefly in his client's ear, and Scott nodded his head. Okay, but first we want a written guarantee of immunity from prosecution for his information, the lawyer told Gary. Gary picked up the phone and said, "Did you hear that?" The state attorney agreed, but only if the information was solid enough to press charges against Cortez. Scott's lawyer took a document out of his briefcase and told Gary to have the state attorney sign it. Gary left the room and returned a few moments later with the signed document, with some changes made to it. The lawyer looked at it, initialed the changes. Gary made a photocopy for Scott's lawyer and kept the original, handing the photocopy to Scott's lawyer, who put it away in his briefcase. Gary Collins was the best interrogator I had ever seen. It did not take him more than half an hour to get Dr. Richard Scott to confess. Soon he was providing us with a treasure trove of information about the Cortez criminal family, names, dates, places, you name it. He revealed it. Everything was being recorded on video and on tape. A written transcript would be made later. The state attorney was enjoying every minute of it. 2 hours later, they took a 15-minute break. Gary left the room and Scott and his lawyer spoke to each other in whispers that we could not hear. When Gary returned, he had Scott's bag with him. Now let us talk about last night. Why did you break into Detective Stevens' house? I was invited, Scott replied. Who invited you? Emily Stevens, he replied. Why was it necessary to bring this with you? Gary asked, placing Scott's unloaded pistol on the table. And what about all this? He asked, emptying the contents of Scott's bag onto the table. A collection of sex toys for sadomasochism and bondage lay there. Scott hesitated and finally began to speak. His lawyer put his hand on his arm and told him not to say anything. Scott freed himself from the grip and said, "Shut up, Benjamin. I want to explain everything." For the next 45 minutes, Scott described how he intended to use each device on Emily. When I am done with her, I will have overcome the only obstacle that prevented her from being my sole possession. She could never face her husband again. What happens when you get tired of her? What will you do with her then? Gary asked. The same thing that happened to the others, he replied. That was my cue to enter the interrogation room. I entered and placed the case containing a syringe and an unlabeled vial of a pink liquid that we found in his bag of toys in front of him. What is this, Dr. Scott? Is this what you use when you have no more use for your playmates? I asked him. No, he replied. It is nothing more than vitamin B1. I give myself an injection when I feel exhausted. Then why do you not give yourself an injection right now? You look exhausted, I said as I filled the syringe with the liquid from the vial. No, no, he shouted. You cannot force me. I will not do it. Come on, Doc. I will help you, I said as I tried to roll up his sleeve. No, that will kill me, he shouted as he tried to get away from me. How could it kill you? It is just a vitamin injection, right, Doc? I said, no, it is not. It is blood serum containing the human immunodeficiency virus. I took it from a patient at the clinic where I worked a while ago. The woman was in the final stages of AIDS when I took the sample of her blood. How many women have you injected this substance into? I asked. 3, he replied. The first 2 were Barbara Taylor and Penny Underwood. Both died of AIDS over a year ago. The last one was Angelique Mendoza, but I understand she committed suicide. His lawyer spoke again, quite loudly. Do not say another word, Benjamin. They cannot do anything to me. They have their signed immunity agreement for my testimony. Scott shouted. That is not entirely true, Doctor, I said. That offer of immunity is only valid for your information and testimony against the Cortez organization, not for any other crime you may have committed. Now, I am officially charging you with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Barbara Simpson and Penny Underwood. Also, 1 count of aggravated battery resulting in the death of Angelique Mendoza. Also, breaking and entering with a firearm with the intent to commit sexual assault. Scott, turning to his lawyer, said they cannot do that, can they? Yes, they can, you arrogant bastard. I tried to stop you. You would not listen to me. Everything you said can be used in court. You have ruined yourself, he said as he stood up and left the room. I motioned for 2 uniformed officers who were just outside the open door to come in. Take him back to his cell, I said, turning to Gary as they left. We slapped each other on the back with big smiles on our faces. We played it like a fiddle, did not we? He said. Yes, we sure did, I replied. Now I just have to make one last phone call. As soon as Scott left the room and was on his way back to his cell, I called Emily at her parents' house. It is over, honey. We got him. He is in custody. You can come home now. Are you okay, Rick? Oh, I am so relieved. Susan and I will leave as soon as we can gather our things. We should be home before 7. I love you, she replied. The trial of Dr. Richard Scott was held 6 months later. It was as we anticipated. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours and returned a verdict of guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Emily and I are still trying to process what almost happened to us. However, with us about to become parents in about 3 months, those memories are fading quickly. A story with suspense, love, betrayal, and hidden twists. It has it all. The only thing to criticize is the fact that when he discovered the doctor's initials, it took him the whole weekend to tell his friend. I would have run to the police station to investigate. But well, it is clear that our detective is a cold-blooded man, so he took things calmly.